Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to your latest instalment of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, hosted by myself, Craig Gray, the independent Rangers podcast made for fans by fans, and as always, all of our content is absolutely free. You can get us over at gersnet.co.uk, where you've got access to the forum, a wonderful history archive as well, and also on Twitter at Gersnet Online. We're live on YouTube this evening, folks. So please give us a like, comment, get involved in the conversation, and please do subscribe to the channel as well. Just before I introduce my guest this evening, I need to give a shout out to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company, and they've been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for many years. And we're absolutely delighted that they're backing our podcast. You can get them over at forestprecisioneng.com, and you can also visit the Forrest Precision Executive Lounge, a stunning new hospitality area within the historic main stand. For information on how to book this unique and intimate space, you can email the club via hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Joining me tonight to discuss another dismal Sunday following Rangers, Mr. Ben Harshaw. Ben, I'd ask how you're doing, but I think we're all feeling the same, mate.
Yeah. Football side of Grand Craig, but the football just it's Groundhog Day, isn't it? Just miserable, and things are maybe getting worse if not rather than better. It's such lethargy. You almost feel like it's pathetic. I don't like to go in and use over sensationalized words, like embarrassing, but it is embarrassing at this stage. It's beyond a joke. Like we are bang average, and are being outplayed and scraping wins. Last week we scraped a win against Livingston. This week, the better football was clearly played by Falkirk, who've just been promoted. It's a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you draw a game 0-0. It's not like we've went and absolutely battered Falkirk and their goalie's just had like the match of his life. It was a dreadful performance, and the worst part is we have seen this before. How many of these performances have we seen? Now, don't like talking about them too much, but I mean, I never seen the Celtic game today, but by all accounts, not creating anything in the second half. They limped over the line against Hibs. They limped over the line last week against St Mirren. They're in a really bad place themselves, and they're just limping over the line. We are performing pretty much the same as them. The difference is with these players and their players have got the mentality to keep going and to grind out results and to get last minute winners. The players do not have that. There is not, to be honest, I don't even think one player in that squad that I could say has that mentality. And we can all talk about ability and stuff like that. And look, the players we have signed are clearly not good enough to play for Rangers. But at the same time, I mentioned it earlier offline, your front four today are all international players. So how they are incapable of creating a decent chance. I mean, the only half decent chance we created was Gassama's one in the second half. How none of those front four could create a decent enough chance. All right, Barami's had a sort of half chance in the first half where he's went a decent wee run and he's put it by the post, but that's it. I mean, for some of these players, I mean, Ant-Man, Asgard, you just look at these guys and you're saying, like, what do you bring to this team? Like, there's just nothing there.
Yeah, it's mesmerizing. Like, I mean, there's absolutely nothing to hang your hat on. I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you said these players just aren't good enough. But and I accept that completely. But the one thing that it's got nothing to do with being good enough is the intensity. You know, we we, we they can't they almost to a certain extent, if we've signed the wrong players and they aren't good enough, at this point that's not their fault. But what you do expect them is and you expect our other players, captain included, to be making sure that the intensity is right. Okay, if the quality at the end of the day isn't there, then fair enough. But it's a collective, it's a whole team. The defense is terrible, the midfield creates nothing, and I know you can then say, okay, the strikers aren't scoring because the midfield aren't creating, but the runs, the movement of Miovski is absolutely abysmal, and has been throughout, well, since he signed, more or less. So and you can say the same for any of the other strikers really. There's the odd moment, you talk about, oh, we've seen this before. I mean, it's actually easier to say when have we not seen this? So this is the norm. When have we actually seen a good performance? Other than that, Victoria Pilsen game at the very start of the season is the only really good performance that I can think of. There's been moments few and far between, but there have been moments at times. But a lot of these players are just so out of their depth, but also it's that mentality. And then you would also equally say there are players in there that, not very many of them, but that do have the quality. Like, we do know that Nico Raskin has the quality, but it's no good having the quality if you're going to show us that maybe once every 3 months or something, and that's being kind to him at this point. So it's embarrassing to come back to that word. It really is embarrassing.
It is. It's just as I say. It's not like this performance is something that we haven't seen before. Like, we seen it last week, limping over the line against Livingston. And to be fair, like on Friday, we were fairly positive, I think, about moving forward. All right, Thursday was obviously disappointing because you've dropped points to a team where you've had the lead and they're down to 10 men and what have you. But, I actually did think we played well for most of that game. And you could perhaps start to see little shoots there. Saying, yeah, we're feeling pretty confident going into the game against Falkirk, which you should.
Yeah.
Like, you're playing Falkirk at home, for goodness sake. If you're not confident going into that game, then, what's the point? And as much as I and a few of us on the show were confident on Friday, I bet there wasn't a lot of fans going in with that feeling as well. But you keep saying, maybe deluding yourself into thinking, if this happens and that happens, then, maybe we could mount a challenge or we could do this or we do that. See, at the end of the day, if you can't beat Falkirk, home or away, if you cannot beat a newly promoted side, you're not going to win the league. In fact, you're not even going to be anywhere near winning the league. You'll be in the position that we're in now, which is struggling to even finish second.
Yeah, I mean, people have been saying, on this podcast and on other places, that, oh, we can still challenge for the league primarily due to how bad the other teams are. But I've never thought this team cannot challenge for any title. I don't think this team can even put a consistent run together to win a Scottish Cup. At this point, I know there's January coming, and hopefully the squad will look different. But as things are, I just don't see them being able to mount games. And whenever they may get to a semi-final game, but when they get to a semi-final or a final, they'll crumble. Because it's just not there mentally. I'm sorry, these players just do not have it. But you say about beating a newly promoted team. I mean, if you look at last week as well, like we create very little, we got out of jail late, but Livingston have a clear penalty. Like, so virtually we should have drawn. Okay, but we could save it, but we should have drawn 2 weeks in a row at home to newly promoted teams, and that says all there is to say about this group of players. We'll get on to talk about the manager. It's very, very hard to make any. There's no doubt there are things I would question, but it's very hard to really blame him when you look at what he's got to work with.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I do think though as well that and we said it before about Mark, like Gio and Beale and Clement, and as much as they all had their shortcomings as well, everyone basically said that the same group of players are going to get you the sack. Now, whilst a lot of them have moved on, there are still a core group that are there from those days, and success breeds success, but failure also breeds failure. So, as much as a lot of these guys like your Lundstroms, Goldsons, and all that, people who we've criticised for saying they didn't have the mentality, all right, they might have left, but look at the players that they're playing with at that time. Like someone like Connor Barron, he would have been learning off John Lundstrom in his first season here, so the bad habits of these players that are here in the past, it seeps through and it stems through into the new group. So even if you are getting rid of the rot, there's still parts of that remain. And it's like, okay, we've sacked Stewart and Felwell. That's all well and good. The players are still here. So it's not as if by sacking them, and obviously it was the right decision. Well, right decision too late, but
Yeah.
Just because you get rid of these people doesn't automatically mean everything's sorted now.
No, I mean, it's how could it? The players are there, they have contracts, they're not going to walk away. It's that old one when they say in football, you can never sack, 22 players. You can only sack the manager usually, and in this case, further up as well. But the damage that has been done by Thelwell, by Stuart appointing Thelwell and by appointing the wrong managers, and that's obviously, Kavanagh has to take blame for that. One, as you just said, he has acted too long. He's taken too long to act. He's acted too late in everything. So if he was the one to eventually say, I would imagine he was the one to eventually say Russell Martin had to go. He's going to have the overall say at the end of the day. That was far too late. The Thelwell was far too late. Stuart was far too late. So far his decision making has been very, very, very poor. And also, given that he's the figurehead and has been, I know that obviously Thelwell probably would have appointed the manager along with Stuart, but he's the figurehead. He is in charge of the club, so he's in charge of signing off on any appointments. So would you trust him right now? Do you get it right now? I'm not including Danny Roll in this because I just think it's too soon. And I think at this point it wouldn't matter who the manager is. There's that much damage. And the concerning thing is, it goes back to that. We've been saying this for years. When we know we've had the wrong players in there, it's very difficult to get these players, out of the club. One, because they know this is the biggest club they will ever play for. Um, the only one, the only one that could move to not a bigger club but to the Premier League at this minute in time would be Rascan, and he's a long way off that. But they've got good wages at Rangers. They're at a big club, and they're not going to get out there until there's something better going to come along. And at the end of the day, we're the ones that have offered them contracts, but we're the ones that have made wrong decisions from top to bottom at this football club for far, far too long. And now, we need to see real action. We need to see planning. We were also excited when this sort of takeover happened in the summer. This was going to be this fresh start. We got a manager that we didn't particularly want, any of us really, but we were prepared to give this new start the benefit of the doubt. But now we need to start seeing something. This blind faith is not gonna continue. And as good as we've said, the players aren't good enough. But what's wrong with this club right now is so much bigger than the players on the pitch. But that has set the tone. The signings have set the tone. The decision making has set the tone. And the sort of malaise that's set in this club is pathetic, especially considering this is supposed to be a fresh dawn. And you can also see, like, when we first come up, to me, this is almost the worst team since we came up. And like then, Celtic seems so far away and almost ungettable at the very start. But like we got them, and for us to then be back in this position so far behind, and actually behind a terrible Celtic team. That team when we first came up under Rodgers was played some decent football and all that, but this is a terrible Celtic team, and they're going to walk to a title, which is absolutely abysmal. Hearts are going to crumble. We are where we deserve to be. This has to be the biggest wake up call for these owners to start taking this seriously and start getting this right.
Well, you look at the crowd today, and the official crowd was just over 50,000, which is clearly a lie. But we're not going to do our whole like freedom of information request to Police Scotland and stuff like that to prove it. You just need to have a set of working eyes to see that crowd wasn't like that. Now you've got that, but also as well you've got a cup game coming up in January at home where can't see many people going to that. You've had the European attendances this season very low. You've got a game against Ludogorets in January, which is meaningless, and it will be meaningless at that point because we'll already be out of the Europa League. So why are people going to pay, I think it's £44 for your season ticket price, which think most people are on the card scheme anyway, so that will come off automatically. But I think it's like £50 to go and watch like a meaningless European game a Thursday night. You know, people will be coming back for their work. It's January, so it'll probably still be a bit cold and wet. But why would you go? And it's it's easy to sort of say, oh well, you need to support the club through the good times and hard, and aye, of course you do. But at the same time, I mean, obviously I was there today, but I've not got an issue now with fans not going, because I mean, I'm kind of looking at myself going, why do I keep doing this? And you're like, well, it's probably just to get the Majors points. Like, but that's, aye, and it's just, it's so bad. But that is what I think will make these owners listen, because at the end of the day, Andrew Kavanagh never invested in Rangers because he loves the club. He invested in Rangers because he wants to make money. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, because if he makes money out of Rangers, the only way he's going to do that is by Rangers being successful. So, you know, it's a win-win, and I'm fine with that. But he has lost a lot of money so far, you know, not just in terms of the ticket sales and whatnot, but these signings, because we've spent, 25, 30 million quid or something like that in the summer. I'm not exaggerating. I think you'd be lucky to recoup 10% of that if you sold all the players right now. And that is saying something.
Yeah, I mean, he's lost all that money, but that's his own fault, as far as I'm concerned, for putting the wrong people in place for spending his money wrongly. So I am hoping that, I think the fact that the crowds are down is the only way that we can kind of make him, as you say, he's come over here to make money as a business. And the only way that you know, I think to a certain extent, he talked about the fan base, you know, and the fan base can be amazing when things are going well. But any fan base is going to struggle to want to go and watch that all the time. And that's the only way. Once you start noticing that, because Rangers fans are loyal, we have, you know, it's easy to say that, where people say you need to stick through thick and thin, but we have stuck through more than any fan base should. You know, and he needs to see that they can't take us for granted, you know, and that we need to be there. We need to be entertained. We need to see something that is befitting of the football club that we know. And it's miles, miles and miles from that. So, you know, that's the only way that he is going to learn those lessons, is by it affecting him financially. And it's going to realize how serious this is. You know, as far as I'm concerned, as you said there, you'd be lucky to get the sort of 10% back. As far as I'm concerned, that money's gone. That money's wasted. The only thing we can do now, in fact, it'll probably cost us more, because even if we do sell the likes of an Asgard, you know, it probably want a payoff, because it'll be going somewhere he'll not be getting half as much as what he's getting from us. So those type of things it's gonna keep costing us. But equally, the club is never going to move forward until this is addressed. And, you know, so then you're going to keep losing money. So we need to just bite the bullet now, make the hard decisions that should have been made a long time ago, really. But, you know, take it Asgard. I was on the pod maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I naively said I thought there was a player in there. And I'm basing that upon one half against Dundee United, where he was very good, and on the idea that he scored four for Norway. But you know, it was out of hope and desperation that it's just not going to work. He's Tom Lawrence all over again. Although Tom Lawrence produced more quality, to be honest with you, in the short time he was on the pitch, and he wasn't good enough. So it's the same. Bajrami, you know, he's not good enough. He's not gonna. He could go through them all and just say that he's not going to make the difference between us being how we are and being successful on a long term basis. And you could say that about so many, but it's time to kind of cut the losses, get these players out. As you say, if you make 10% back, I think you'd be lucky at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kavanagh's issue in terms of the ownership. I think he, like many people have done in the past, has severely underestimated Rangers Football Club, the organisation, the institution, the supporters. And see as well, like in most normal businesses, right, most owners don't want to do the sort of day-to-day running stuff, right? They want to put their money in, and they'll employ plebs to do the work for them, and they sit back and they take the profits. And I think the way Cavan has tried to do that here as well, he's kind of been a wee bit semi-passive. Like, they'll come over for the, the press days and the big interviews and all that when they first take over. That's great. Then he heads back to America for a few months, and then you don't see him again until there's like a big, like an Old Firm game or a European game or something like that. So, like, that's not a good look for a club like Rangers. For me, I think you need an ownership who are going to be hands on and are going to be there all the time. I mean, we had it under Murray, I suppose. We all know how that ended, but at the same time, for the first sort of 10 plus years of his tenure, like, he was untouchable. You know what I mean? Like, in Scotland and even in, like, the wider sort of world of football, to be quite honest. So,
yeah,
but that's because he's got the relationships. He's coming in, he's working with people, he's seeing them every day, he knows the people at the SFA and the SPL, this, that, and the next thing, and eventually you build up a relationship over time. I mean, is Andrew Kavanagh going to know Neil Doncaster? Are they going to have a relationship? No, I highly doubt it. So when it comes to trying to influence the SPFL or the SFA about decisions that have been made against us, for quite a while now, and other things as well about how we're treated as a club, how we're perceived as a club by the media and by the national government bodies of the sport. How is he going to be able to influence them if he's, living in Philadelphia?
No, that's absolutely right. And the point that you make is an important one. It's that, I think certainly would we, if put it this way, if everything had gone swimmingly this season and we were sitting top of the league or very close to there, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation and caring where Patrick, or sorry, where Kavanagh is. But we're not, and we're living here. So you want to see that investment from him, and I don't mean that in a fiscal sense. I mean that in his time, in his showing that he's a figurehead, that he's a leadership, and showing that this matters to him. So I want to see that now. This is a point now. If I was in charge, or if I was owning this in some parallel universe, I was owning Rangers, I would certainly be there now, getting this on a good footing and getting this on a consistently winning basis. And then if he wants to go off into the sunset and only be seen now and again once we are winning, once we have the right people. But right now, I would be there every single day to make sure that I am overseeing, and even just from a PR point of view, it's important. But you make that point about would he have the relationships with with Neil Doncaster and with the SFA and the SPFL. And that's important. But I think even if he doesn't, we need to have somebody on board that does. So equally, Patrick Stewart worked most of his career down south, as far as I know. So he didn't really have as much there. And then you've also Kevin Felwell. I mean, he's not worked in Scottish football. So again, I'm not trying to rehash, and it's not about whether they're right or wrong for the job, but we need to be more careful about who we're picking. Almost, I know Kavanagh obviously didn't come from the championship down south, but it almost feels in some way like these sort of players that we signed from that, and you always get that same feeling. I think we're going to come up here, we're going to pitch it. It's only the Scottish League, and it almost feels like that was the way they sort of walked into this club. And they walked into, oh, we're walking into Rangers. Rangers do well in Europe, and it's only the Scottish League. We don't even sign the odd player that we might sign for the championship in Leeds, like Rothwell, for example, and it'll be easy. And that's just naive. It's not looking at the picture. It's not doing the research, and it surprises me in terms of the businessmen that they are, that they didn't put enough up. They clearly didn't put enough research, enough time, enough thought into it. And I'm only hoping that it does. I know we're not a feeder club or anything to Leeds, but it seems almost in some ways that it's like, oh well, if Greta Steinson's there, if it worked at Leeds, it'll work here. We can just sort of do the same thing. We're not the same. It's not the same club. It's not the same city. It's not the same league. Glasgow is unique, as we all know. I'm not saying Leeds are a massive football club and a massive city, but Leeds is a one club city. So there's a major difference already. And also their aspirations of, it's not Leeds of the 70s who were at challenge at the very top, or or whenever that was, just before my time. Like, but it's a Leeds team that they're a massive club, but they'd be happy to stay in the Premier League this season. You know, we're Rangers. We want to win the league every single season. So it needs a different approach. And I'm hoping that this car crash at the start has finally shown them that.
Yeah, and it might be the only way that it does sort of seep through to them. This bad start. I mean, in terms of like a long term sort of picture or long term aspirations, I mean, in my opinion, right, Rangers and Celtic, to be fair, they should be seen as like a kind of Ajax, Benfica, Porto type level team where they're in unique, smaller countries, massive clubs, but at the same time, I mean, Ajax are having a shit season now, so that might be a bad example, but Ajax, Benfica, Porto, these clubs regularly get to the sort of knockout latter stages of the Champions League. And then, by the way, maybe one year, like 2004 with Porto, if other teams are doing badly, you get a couple of decent draws and your squad's good enough. Who knows what you can go on to achieve? It's knockout
Although the
football.
game's changed
Even
financially so much since
yeah,
then, hasn't it? It
yeah.
makes that even
But even
harder.
then, like Ajax, I think they had a good run in 2019
They did, yes,
as
semi-final.
well, and most of their players all came through for their youth system. So as much as you have mentioned that is a fair point. Obviously, the financial gap between Scotland and everywhere else is massive now. Even Scotland compared to the Netherlands and Portugal is massive, never mind England. So that's fair enough. But at the same time, we're not going to make any progress. We're not going to get anywhere if we just keep saying, oh, well, they've got more money than us. So that's it. Like, we need to come up with unique ways to increase revenue, to develop better players now, like youth development. There is no reason why Rangers training centre and the youth development team cannot be on the same level as some of these elite clubs down south. And I say that because you're talking about like pennies compared to player investment, like in first team players on youth development. It does cost a bit of money, but if you invest a good few million in that, you could have a similar setup to a Liverpool or a Man City or somebody like that, and then there's no reason as to why you can develop decent enough players that can go on and do that. But it's just everything around the club now is just it's so toxic, so divisive.
Yeah.
Even the fans today, like there was nothing like you're just going to games and you're not even getting angry or upset anymore. It's like emotionless, and you've just come to expect it, and that's probably the worst part for me. It's just like people aren't even shouting and screaming at that anymore because they're just fed up.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a sense of apathy all around it. I mean, you know, equally, I know that you obviously on Friday night said you were feeling reasonably confident, which you should, and you would get into the game. But I bet nobody on the podcast on Friday night would say they're overly shocked either that we've done this today. So, that just sums it up for me. The point that you were making there about the reserve team, or about the youth team, is a good one. But I think that the lack of competitive football there is so telling. It's very, very hard to have somebody who's an RB team or academy not playing competitive football, no reserve league. They're not even in the Lowland League anymore. And then you're expected to throw them into the first team. But the point is something has to change because we're it's not like we can say we haven't spent money. We've spent money. We've tried to bring these players from down south. We tried to bring players in from other places. And how many in the last 3 years would you say have been a success in terms of signings? It You struggle, don't you? So something has to change. So maybe the young players is the way to go.
I mean, it's a shame, but because you've got guys there like Finlay Curtis, Lyle Cameron, albeit he signed for Dundee, but he's still a young Scottish player.
Yeah.
Guys that have shown a bit of promise, something about them, and they can't even get on the pitch. And I kind of understand that you've got to balance it out because as much as I'm saying you might only get 10% back for the duds that we signed in the summer, if you do play them and they start to do one or two wee things that maybe some idiot from another club picks up on and thinks, oh, they're a great player, then you can maybe upsell them a wee bit. So I kind of understand why you need to do that. But at the same time, like, this is Rangers. you should just be picking the best 11 for every single game who's on it. And, if you're starting to play players who don't deserve to play just because they cost X amount of money, or because, or we might need to sort of G them up to make a wee bit of money off them. For me, that's when we stop becoming like Rangers and stop operating as a big club, because the reason that one of the reasons that we all support Rangers is because we are unique and we are special, and it's just these wee things, and a lot of it's, I think, went missing certainly over the last few years. I hope the new ownership are trying to change that and to keep us a unique club, but the early signs, are saying that that's not happening, because you mentioned it earlier, Ben. It's as if they've tried to replicate what they've done at Leeds United, and you just can't do that up here in Glasgow.
No, that's it. That's it. You can't. And everything so far has been worrying, and it's been in a poor trend, and it's been very, very slow. They've been very slow to acknowledge that. I don't mind them coming in for the first time and making mistakes, but we need to see that they realise that early enough before it gets out of hand, and a season gets away from you, like in my opinion it already has. But I think the whole thing about having to play them to sort of G them up to get them in the window and stuff, I think you can kind of do that if you have the basis of a good team and you've got one or two who are the problem. And you're thinking, right, I just need to get him some regular games so I can sell him in January. But our problem is there's 11 of them. There's not one player right now. If you ask me who's the one player that you don't want to lose, I couldn't tell you that. There's not one player that if we sold tomorrow that I would be absolutely heartbroken. And that's a damn indictment of a Rangers team. There's one or two that you might think, but right now, if a bid come in for Raskin, from what he is, I know he has the quality, but what he's producing, I wouldn't be heartbroken if he was away.
He's been terrible this season, yeah. And I know all the stuff happened at the start with Russell Martin and whatnot, but Raskin won that war. He's still here. Russell Martin isn't, and Russell Martin's not been here for a couple of months now. So why is he still playing like that?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, he goes away with Belgium, he puts in all these brilliant performances. He'll probably get selected to be in the World Cup squad. Good for him. But again, it's like, he's a good player. Obviously, he's got qualities, but he's done nothing remarkable in a Rangers jersey. And I say that in the sense of, what has he won? The famous words of Graham Souness: show me your medals. I don't even think that League Cup that we won a couple of years ago, I don't actually think he played a game in that tournament. So I technically think he might not even have won a single trophy at Ibrox. And the way that some people sort of laud this guy, is that what we've became now? Like, and there's so many players like over the last few years that a lot of people seen as like heroes or this, that, and the next thing. I'm just like, what? Like, guys like Todd Cantwell and stuff like that. And you see the Blackburn manager falling out with him yesterday. Another example of a player who, he's fine when he wants to play for himself. He doesn't want to play for the team. And Raskin, sadly for me, is seeping into that territory. Another player, Diamande, came on for 10 minutes, terrible. He is 100% in that camp for me, where he is only playing for himself when he can be bothered. I don't care if he's like good enough on paper, which he is. I don't care. He doesn't try. He's not putting in the effort. He should not be playing. He should not be playing, especially ahead of guys like Lyle Cameron, who, is there a drop in quality there? Yeah, there is. Diamande is obviously a better player than Lyle Cameron, but at least Lyle Cameron will run through a brick wall for you. At least Lyle Cameron will try, and then in time, he will eventually become a better player, and then you've got the perfect mix of a good player, but they've also got the work ethic as well. And there's just too many in there that they can turn it on when they want to. But it's just so lazy, I think, for a lot of them.
It is, no, and the Diamande versus Cameron thing is a good point, because we know what we're getting from Diamande, and he can on his day be very good, and he might give you 6 good performances a season, but that's not Rangers. We need you to have 6 average games and the rest be good games. That's it. If you're a player that supposedly is one of the best in the league, one of the best in our team, well, we don't see it nearly often enough. And with when you talk about Cameron, there might be a drop in quality. Although I've been impressed enough by what I've seen from him. He certainly will give you everything that we were talked about at the start of the pod. We talked about lack of intensity, lack of enthusiasm, lack of energy, drive. He'll bring you that, and so will Finley Curtis. And that's what this team needs right now. A bit of somebody who's going to grab a game by the scruff of the neck, because the likes of Diamande and Raskin right now are just letting the games pass them by, and oh well, sure, we'll go again on Thursday, we'll go again during the midweek or whatever. And they just don't seem. I mean, Raskin's got everything in terms of, he's a workhorse at times. He can be. He's good on the ball. He's obviously good in the air. He's doing so well for Belgium, but yet he can't stand out on a pitch against Livingston or Falkirk. I mean, that's desire, that's effort. You know what I mean? He clearly has the quality. To me, on his day, he's the best player in the league. But that's maybe saying more about the league than it is anything else. But he can't produce it. Is that because he can't be bothered? I don't know, but he doesn't seem desperately heartbroken at the end of a game, does he?
No, but I mean, if you want to sort of compare and contrast, I mean, look over there with Callum McGregor, and I mean, I don't like Callum McGregor because he's a Celtic player, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, he is a leader. He is a captain.
He wins
he
games
is.
in moments.
He wins games. He can grab the game by the scruff of the neck. Him doing that last week against St Mirren, that is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Maybe not even a captain, but like a leader in the midfield or something like that to do. And if you look at guys like Callum McGregor, we've not got anyone like that. And I don't want to turn that into a sort of Tav bashing episode, but I mean, I know you can lead differently, and I do like Tav, but if you just compare and contrast it, for me, it's night and day, and it's not just that, but Celtic have got multiple players in that team, like Callum McGregor, who are willing to fight, are willing to run, and even when they're playing crap, like they have been recently, they can still dig out results. We don't have that, and like I said, the most frustrating thing again, it's like it's not as if we battered Falkirk today. It's not as if we went out, had 20 shots and goal, and their keeper's had the game of his life. We seen the exact same game last week, but without the goals. Do you know what I mean? Against
Yeah.
Livingston, it was rinse and repeat. And as you said, Ben, 2 games against two newly promoted sides, and to be quite honest, we've been very lucky to come away with 4 points, because I think we should have been coming away with 2 points max for the last 2 games.
Yeah, so do I. So it's hard to make a case for anything else. And then you look at the game during midweek. We rely on a set piece from a handball. Other than that, we create nothing, and so it's a pattern that is going on and on and on again, and it points to lack of intensity. The difference is, you talk about McGregor and you talk about them. They lack quality, we lack quality, but they have a desire to win, to get over the line. We don't. We say, oh well, we'll try again. Whereas they're terrible by all accounts against them, and don't deserve to win the game, but they find a way to win it, and that's what wins you titles. And but that again, that's because they have people that have gone the distance and have won titles. And we are us winning is the exception.
No, that's true. So we talk about the manager then, Danny Rule. Getting a wee bit of criticism today, which is fair. I mean, the manager's not getting criticised after drawing 0-0 at home to Falkirk, then there definitely is something wrong. What's your take? I think maybe start on like team selection, because obviously he's persisting with guys like Antman and Asgard and stuff like that. He brought Barami in, so maybe he was kind of listening to the fans on that one a wee bit, because I think a lot of the fans did want Barami in the team. The difference is they wanted him in the team and Asgard out of the team. They didn't want him playing in the left.
No.
So what, has your sort of opinion on him changed or stayed the same, or what's your overall feelings on him at the moment?
Look, it's very much stayed the same, but there are one or two things that are certainly small red flags. Now, in terms of team selection, I don't, for the life of me, see why. Now, I don't know if there's a fitness issue with Magoma or whatever, but I don't for the life of me see why Max Aarons is getting the game at left back. I mean, we learned that in August, so you would think a manager coming in would have watched our games and would say that. I mean, you may as well be playing Broxy Bear there at left back. So it's that concerns me. However, I also look at the options. I mean, the idea that Vieira is still getting the game. I know the injuries that we have, but like that, it shows how bad this squad is. The fact that fella's getting a game of football every single week, and it is a car crash waiting to happen at any moment. Um, I wanted to see Bajrami. I was pleased to see him playing, but I would have played him in central absolutely. I think we've learned enough to know over the last season that he isn't a left winger. And at the end of the day, if you're going to bring the fella in, play him in his best position. I think that sort of Asgard thing was he's playing him out of almost hope, desperation that something will finally click. But I just can't see it ever happening. I would have very much liked to have seen him playing in central. I would have played obviously McGoma at left back, and I would have played Finlay Curtis on the left wing. Give him a proper run out. I think he certainly would have given them a lot more to think about and a lot of energy, and got us up the field much better than those that were played there. And I would be playing Lyle Cameron at this point in the centre for the energy. It would have been, I still would have persisted with Raskin. I would have played Byron, and then I obviously would have played Cameron in there as well. Antman, I suppose it comes down to that whole thing where you sort of have to keep trying some of them. Antman probably hasn't been playing just as much, so I can kind of understand why, but he certainly doesn't give you any impression that he's gonna come good. And then up front, it's a choice between bad strikers basically at this point in time. I was probably pleased enough to see Majovsky playing, but the thing there are concerning things with the manager in terms of, again, we can go over it and over it and over it and over it. The squad isn't good enough. However, he needs to make changes at certain points of the game where he can affect it. Like the other night, for example, you could clearly see that we were crying out to make changes, especially when they went down to 10 men. If we'd have brought a bit of energy on there, that was our chance to go for the game. Whereas he sort of sat back and watched, and you could see that Braga were growing into the game, even though they were down to 10 men. And it was kind of inevitable where we went with it. So I'm not going to judge the manager ultimately until he's had certainly this January. But I think he's going to need a lot longer. But the fact that things have been so bad before, and he's walked into an absolute, I don't know, bomb scare of a club right now, means that it's very, very hard to expect him. He has, to be honest, he's done well to get the 4 wins in a row. But now we have hit a stumbling block, and it's important to see how he reacts. I would be concerned if we don't have real changes, and I would be concerned if you don't see the likes of Cameron coming in on Wednesday night. It is. So I think now is the time that we'll learn as much about this manager. It's okay to be like, okay, we're racking up the wins, even though we're not playing well, and not change things. Now's the time where you see a manager when he makes the changes, but I think that has to come substitute wise a wee bit quicker as well.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. Like, now that we have had this first sort of stumbling block in the league, and it's one of those stumbling blocks that shouldn't be happening. Like, there is no rhyme or reason as to why Rangers should be dropping points at home to Falkirk, like, ever, to be quite honest. So I mean, like, Falkirk coming to get a result at Ibrox should be like a once in a 30 or 40 year moment. Do you know what I mean? If the stumbling block was away at Hibs, and maybe Butland does to save that penalty, or away to Aberdeen, or away to Celtic, you go, well, they're tough places to go, it can happen. Yeah. But at home to Falkirk, that's a pretty big one. But it will be interesting to see now how he does react on Wednesday. And the thing is, I mean, obviously we're talking about team selection there. I would like to see sort of Cameron and Curtis come in, but then I'm kind of going, who would you play them with? Because in the midfield, I mean, I don't want Raskin or Diamandi anywhere near that team at the moment. So who would the midfield, like, I don't know, barring Cameron Barami or barring Cameron and Curtis? I mean, that's the issue as well. It's like, if you're no going to play a lot of these players that you're saying are rubbish, or maybe not rubbish, but just don't have the mentality for it, then, who are you going to play? But I think it will be interesting to see how he does react. January as well, and the transfer windows are always big, but there is something really interesting with this one. The first thing that I don't want to hear about January is excuses, and it's a difficult window to sign players.
Doesn't matter.
Complete nonsense for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't really see why it would be any different from the summer. You get a bit longer with the summer, but maybe clubs will try and mess you about or overpriced players or whatever. See, at the end of the day, we had made massive mistakes in the summer. So if we've got players that we 100% want and think, right, he's going to come in, be a first team starter and improve the team instantly, just go and get them, right? Do everything in your power to get them, and then we'll be happy. It's kind of like the Shankland scenario a couple of years ago where, well, to be honest, I don't even think we were interested in him, but he was available for a free in the summer as well. Just go and get him. Do you know what I mean? Like, you want to be a big club, you've got to act like a big club. So if we see a guy that's, I don't know, £7 million, a striker that we think, right, this guy's going to absolutely do it, just go and get him. Obviously, hopefully it's not like Chamite, but I mean, it's huge, January, not just for the manager, but I think for the ownership as well, because I mean the league's done as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
I cannot see us mounting a challenge, but I do think if we can sign the right players in January, if you have a good second half of the season, you can beat Celtic, you at least show signs that we can bring in decent players. That's big for the manager, but then also the ownership, because if we go into January and have another disastrous window, and then in April or May we're sacking Danny Rule because the results haven't been good enough. I mean, you couldn't get a worse first year than that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's key to kind of set the tone going forward. Yes, mistakes have clearly been made, but if we are to believe in this regime and to believe in that the club can be successful under this, then we need to see it. And the important thing is, like, I know what you're saying in terms of you don't want to hear this crap about it being a hard window to buy in, but and that's fair enough. And I agree. There's two windows with which we can do business, and this is one of them. So we need to make it count. But equally, what concerns me is that we don't really know right now. It's such an important window. It's only a month long, and we need to hit the ground running. We need results from the get go, and so we don't even know who's signing these players. We ideally want to have players ready for the 1st of January. And I know it doesn't always work like that, and they'll not all be, but we don't need to be signing players on the 30th or 31st of January because so much football and important games will have been feeling gone. So that concerns me. Like, who's sourcing our players right now? Who's looking for them? Who's got the overall say as well? Is it solely down to the manager? Because we had that with Michael Beale. That didn't work then. One, it's too much for the manager to do in the modern game, as well as trying to get the best out of the crap that's on the pitch at the minute. So that's a key thing. We need to get somebody in this job. I know we don't want to rush and get the wrong person or whatever, but you would think problems were mounting. It was inevitable that Stuart and Fellwell were going to go. So you would think that we should, any business, let alone a football club, any business should have a succession plan for key leadership positions. And you would like to hope that them having run the businesses and running the businesses that they do should have something in place. But you wouldn't hold your breath at this point. But January is huge. And I think it's huge as well for being able to get players out as much as it is players in. And also, like the likes of Raskan, like if Raskan isn't going to sign a new deal, I'd be selling him in January, without a shadow of a doubt. And you're certainly not getting him a new deal right now because he's been playing well. And it sounds like I'm going for him all over the place. I still would be playing him in the team for what it's worth at the minute, primarily because we don't have much better. But I think it's not that you give him a good new contract because he's doing so well. It's you're giving him to protect the fact that it is one of the very few assets, whether he's playing well or not.
Yeah, well, he certainly can't lace the guy's boots that's behind you there anyway in that picture for him, that's for
That's it.
sure. But it is an interesting point you made there about who is signing the players, and I do like Danny Rule, and I'm hopeful that he will be a success. But at the same time, I mean, backing a young manager who doesn't have much experience in terms of managing a team, kind of like we done with Michael Beale, it is concerning because again, are we going to be in a position where if they are all duds, we can't sack Danny Rule because we've put too much money into it for it to fail, if you know what I mean, and then we just keep persisting with something as well. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't overly enamoured by the appointment at first. He has grown on me, to be fair. Cliche, but I like the way he speaks. He comes across as like a decent enough person who I think's pretty honest as well, and he's no stupid either. Obviously, I'm saying he's got a lack of experience, but you don't get to be the assistant at Bayern Munich or the assistant at Germany if you've not got something about you. And he did do a pretty decent job at Sheffield Wednesday in the most horrible circumstances. So he's went from one bin fire to another. So maybe that's a good thing that he's got experience of badly run clubs. But hopefully it does all work out. But January is just it's so huge. Like I mean, there's no been a bigger transfer window since the last one, to be quite honest. Because it just, but why is it though? We're saying this like every transfer. Oh, this is a huge transfer. This is a huge. There needs to be a point where that ends. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and maybe I was gullible enough to think a while ago that if we could get 2 or 3 players in, that could change the complex of the team. We need 11 new players. Like, and that is not an exaggeration. And I get the whole, you can't do that. Well, we're going to have to. Like, it just needs ripped up and started again.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. Again, I don't think you're going to get 11 players, but if you can certainly make a dent in that, or you can bring in 5 or 6 first team starters plus get rid of a couple of loanees that are abysmal, and maybe get in a couple of loans that will actually get us through the rest of the season. Ideally, loans that maybe were with a view to signing them permanently. The loans that we've been making of late, we were never going to sign Max Aarons, even if he was brilliant. We were never going to sign Giga, I don't think, if he was brilliant. So I don't mind one or two of those, but I think it's been getting the most out of what resources we have, and we have done the very opposite. So it's maximizing our value, but also look into the future. I mean, you look at that defense. Like, how many of those players would you expect to be there in 2 years starting for Rangers? None.
Yeah, I know. The defence is horrible, and that is actually a point I made earlier. Obviously, maybe he's persisting in playing guys like Asgard and Antman because, like, with a view to sell him in January. But then, what's the excuse for playing Max Aarons and Giga? Because they're just rubbish and they're no real players, and they're
Yeah,
just going to cost us
there's
money,
no
and we
excuse.
cannot get anything back on them. So what's the point? But aye,
But then
tough life to go through.
the alternative at left back's not our player either. So
Well, aye, that's true. Magoma. So aye, brilliant. Aye, too many loans, not enough permies. But aye, it's a tough life being a Rangers fan, isn't it, Ben?
it
And
is
it just
indeed.
continues on. I don't know how many games I've got in December, but it'll feel like we've got one every 3 days, which, to be fair, we probably do because it's that time of year. But I mean, just over a month's time, I think that Old Firm game's the 3rd of January. So in maybe 5 weeks, that'll be done, and then you'll see for this one from that game there, just maybe the future for Danny Rowe in the sense that we can maybe see over the next month if this guy's got it to be the Rangers manager. This is going to be his toughest test, and he needs to get through this next month unscathed. Otherwise, it it could be pretty bad news. But I think that's a decent place to finish up on. Anyway, I've taken up far too much of the viewers' time this evening, Ben. Back in on Friday, it'll be John and Stuart to review, hopefully, a win at Tannadice on Wednesday. As I say, we're live tonight on YouTube, and we'll be on all of our usual podcast providers in the coming moments as well. And all that's left for me to do now is thank my guest, Ben. Thanks for joining me, mate. Pleasure as always.
Yes, cheers, Craig. Good to talk, and cheers to everyone for watching.
Yep, and thanks to the viewers at home for watching this. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.